Started. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is our session about upgrading from a platform owner's perspective. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to wait until about 3 minutes after the top of the hour here, just so that everybody can get in and get situated. While you're popping in here, if you want to drop in the chat where you're coming in from today, and maybe one thing that you're hoping to get out of the webinar. All right, cool. We've got the Eastern contingent here, Maryland, Virginia, Toronto. I happen to be on the East Coast this week, so I'm coming in from Delaware. There's Montreal. Oh, okay, there we go. India. Oh, there's Rochester, Minnesota, Tennessee, Atlanta. I love these multicultural global events. Bangalore, Phoenix, Liverpool, Sweden. Waving at Jerry from his window, Mohammed.
Hey Mohammed, how you doing? Hi everyone. Yeah, nice to see everyone, like I said, coming from all the different parts of the globe.
Yeah, got a few people from my usual state of Minnesota, Chicago, Canada. Got a Canadian contingent today across the.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah. So I'll just give it 2 more minutes here. And just a reminder throughout the event, if you have questions, please drop those into the Q&A. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And we like to capture all the questions, because if we don't have time to get to all of them, those will also be posted with the recording and a copy of the deck after the event. Minnesota nice in the building, yes. And Rajeth from India, who's probably not sitting in a sweater vest like me this morning. It's a little damp and chilly here this morning. So we're looking forward to an interactive session today. We got a couple polls for you. I know Jerry's got some good information to share with you. And then we'll be interested to hear from you all when we get into the question and answer. So Jerry, it's 3 minutes after the top of the hour. So if you want to go ahead and kick things off, we'll get this party started. And you're still on mute.
That's fine. I've got I've got myself off mute. So let me just go to the next slide. Okay. It's just do we need to talk about anything around the safe harbor, Britta?
I can take that one. Yeah. So we just, it's probably not applicable for this webinar, but if there's any statements made about features coming in the ServiceNow platform, they are not promises that those things will actually happen. So it's just a caveat that we're not promising anything in this webinar, basically, I guess, as far as new features in the platform.
Okay, thank you, Britta.
Yeah.
So welcome everyone, and thank you again, for your time to join this webinar. I just want to kind of go through in terms of what the goal of today's webinar is really kind of from my perspective on how we can equip platform owners, and there's really how we can obviously educate our business stakeholders with the relevant knowledge, the strategies that we can effectively, how we can plan and execute and manage ServiceNow upgrades. Now, again, we can also, minimize that disruption, but importantly is how can we align that with the business objectives? And, for me, I think from a platform owner perspective is how we can maximize that value realize. So from some of the new features that we are going to see in the Xanadu upgrades, but again, for any kind of future upgrades that the ServiceNow platform has. So I really do hope at the end of this webinar that you'll leave with a clear understanding of how the approach, the upgrade it's not just a technical necessity, but it's also a critical component of driving the business success. And again, how can we start to utilize some of that new features, capability and maintaining that competitive advantage within your own kind of business areas. Okay, so just a bit about me. So again, good morning and also afternoon, so wherever you're watching. So I'm really, really pleased that you're here with me, and I'm really excited kind of to share kind of my experience as a platform owner about upgrades. So my name is Jerry, and I'm a product owner at the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom. Been working with ServiceNow, the platform, for around 7 years. And, kind of for my particular role is kind of how can we leverage it to drive those business outcomes and align with the strategic goals of the organization. So in my role, I've really had the opportunity to kind of lead and run ServiceNow upgrades, and that's closely working with developers, from a technical perspective, and then also working with our business stakeholders as well, really to ensure how we can have a smooth transition with our upgrades and minimize those disruptions as well. I think in terms of my knowledge and experience, not just about maintaining the system, but also importantly that we need to realize the full value, the full value of those new features, and how we can keep the platform aligned with those business needs. I think last week, Britta had William Saylor. He covered more of the technical perspective from a developer and administrator on really kind of how best to upgrade. But I think in this webinar, I'm really going to share some of those best practices, those lessons learned, some of those common pitfalls to avoid when planning and managing a ServiceNow upgrades from a business-driven perspective. So I'm really kind of excited to share my insights, and I think this is going to really help you as, again, if you are a platform owner, or you're the first time in your career or the business that you're using ServiceNow, is again, how can you get the most value from the platform as a platform owner. Okay, some of the kind of topics I'm going to run through. And again, as Britta mentioned earlier, that we've got some polls that we will ask you to fill out. Again, just to get some insights in terms of what journey you're on at within your upgrades, and what, again, the business perspective that we're gonna see with your upgrades. But in terms of the agenda, we're going to walk through several key areas, obviously to ensure that we've got a smooth, successful ServiceNow upgrade process. Is why do ServiceNow upgrade matters to your business? We're going to look at how this is not just about a technical task, but it's also critical for your business, about how we can improve efficiency. We want to be able to minimize risk, taking advantage of some of those new features that can really drive your organization forward. And we're also going to explore how the upgrades are really going to align with your business objectives, and what happens if you delay them. Second one is about pre-upgrade planning, some of the business considerations. I think in this part, we're looking at more of the planning phase. We're going to really talk about engaging the business stakeholders early, how we're going to look at performing cost-benefit analysis, and really kind of develop a solid communication strategy, really to ensure that at this stage of the planning for the upgrade, ensure that it aligns with the business goals, and it's also executed with the full support of your own organization. The third point is around executing the upgrade and also minimize those business disruption. And again, we're going to cover how we're going to execute that upgrade. And we're going to be looking at phase approaches. We want to be able to ensure we've got proper testing, engaging our key users in those processes. And we're also going to discuss how we can leverage IT service management practices to kind of manage that change effectively, but also reducing those risks during execution. The next point is around the post upgrades. How can we maximize that business value? So once the upgrade is completed, so how do we actually realize those full value of those new features or the enhancements that we have with the next upgrades, Xanadu, or any future upgrades? But we're going to talk about how we ensure your adoption within your organization, how we can also track key performance indicators, and how we can start to optimize processes post upgrade to ensure that you're really getting the most out of your investment. And again, looking at after the upgrade, it's all more about the continued improvement and looking how can you better improve your upgrade, so about future upgrade planning. So again, I believe that from a continuous improvement, the planning for your future upgrades should be part of your overall IT strategy. And we're gonna talk about how you can build a roadmap, based on those business priorities and also your kind of IT service management or enterprise service management best practices to make sure that your platform continues to evolve with your business. A bit of a recap as well. So to give a quick recap in some of the key takeaways from today's discussion, and then we can help to reinforce those important points. And again, we're going to open up some of those questions later. So again, please feel free to ask any of the questions that related to the topics we've covered, or any other concerns that you might have around the upgrade. And in terms of my goal today is really to equip everyone in a platform owner perspective, or again, if you're interested in that particular area of looking around how we consider, how do we work with the business around upgrades, is a bit of a clear framework, how we not just only keep the system running smoothly, but also how can we drive measurable value for your business. Okay, Britta, I think just the first poll, if you can put that up. But I think the first poll that we would like to ask you is, what is your organization's main reason for upgrading ServiceNow? Hopefully, Britta, you can put that poll up.
Yeah, I have. Can everybody see the poll? There we go. Got some folks answering. So I made this a short answer one, so we're not really going to see the answers come up as we go here, and I can read some of those out after people get done
Okay. Yep.
with the answers. That's the problem with short answer. But I wanted to capture like all of the different types of reasons why people might do an upgrade, what their
Okay.
motivation is. So we got about 38% of the folks have answered. We'll let it go for another minute or two here. And then, all right, anybody else want to get an answer in before I stop the poll here? Okay, they're still coming in, Jerry.
They're still coming in. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
They got a
I
lot
mean,
to
some of
say.
the, I mean, some of the answers that I've, kind of thought about is, sometimes in my experiences, we only upgrade when necessary because, we need to stay, you need to stay supported within the version that ServiceNow would support you on. So again, sometimes you want to be able to obviously take advantage of the new features, capabilities, and then also kind of improve performance and stability. But I'll move on anyway from that. So thank you everyone for completing that poll.
So some of the results we've got were one platform for access remains supported, unclear, we are informed we must, ServiceNow best practices, new features, performance, compliance, function features, contractual engagement, security, keep within N-1, stay current. So it looks like, a lot of folks are, and I get this, trying to stay compliant. And that seems to be the main motivator. And so I hope from what Jerry talks about today is you can have more compelling reasons that are more compelling to your business as opposed to compelling to ServiceNow for why you want to upgrade.
Yeah, so and I think I think in terms of what you're taking that part, I think given kind of my experience working in technical space and working with the ServiceNow platform, again, we often see that it is a technical necessity to upgrade because I think sometimes with against the busyness that we have in our day-to-day jobs and also there's general enhancement that comes in, sometimes we might not have the space or the time to be able to plan for your upgrades. But I think it's just important that we do plan in the time. We do explain back to the business, especially from a platform owner's perspective, that it does play a bigger role as part of the platform, as part of the strategy, to ensure again, the business is running at its best and it's utilizing those features and capabilities. So I think what I'll talk about around, some of the points that I've listed there is, the business goals. So I think from my perspective, upgrades should really kind of align with your strategic goals, with your organization. Because, again, I said, before, where if we're going to try to upgrade to stay within the supported version or even a version behind, and obviously that's just, it's due to unclear business goals. So you're just upgrading for the sake of upgrading and not really have a clear direction on, what features and some of those, again, whether it's new features, whether it's features that are coming in line with new subscription models, is to be aware of that and again, tailoring that to your, roadmap as well. But I do believe that if you're staying up to date with the ServiceNow releases, is how can you start to adopt some of those new features that will be coming in Xanadu and also in the future releases. But again, it's looking how we can look at those to improve efficiency. We can look at how we can automate some of those repetitive processes that are, again, looking at your day-to-day operational staff, or speaking to some of those key stakeholders and understanding what are those mundane processes that they're coming in and just day in, day out doing it, and how can we start to look at some of those new features to be able to help improve that efficiency. And also, how can we also look to better our services to both for our employees and also our customers. So again, giving that good employee experience, customer experience, but also to your employees and that are working within the platform. Because what you want to do is just free them up of doing some of those mundane jobs and let them obviously focus on some of those valuable work that they can input as well. I think in terms of reducing business risk, I think if you delay your upgrade, I think you can introduce some several risk. I think sometimes with an older version, again, we've seen in the past there's some security vulnerabilities. And again, depending on the sector that you work in, whether it's the banking, retail, government, public services, you might have some compliance that regulation that you need to keep up to date with as well. So making sure, that you don't want to leave any gaps within your business and expose, and that could, damage the reputation for your own business as well. So I think, in terms of, just keeping up to date and making sure that you are planning, is that you're going to increase those performance, you're going to increase compliance, increase security, but also that advantage of, again, taking advantage of those new features as well. I think in terms of the next point I've got is competitive advantage is, we talk about leveraging some of those new features. If you're not taking the leverage of those new features and you're thinking about, okay, we've got an idea here, but we want to, maybe bring in a partner, or we want to kind of build or, do some customizations. But again, if you take note of what ServiceNow is upcoming in terms of their roadmap, and you've got something that's out of the box that you can start to realize the business value, and those enhancements to really kind of optimize your process, you can start to look at how we can improve those user experience. And I think if your organization is not taking advantage of some of those new features, you're going to fall behind. You are going to fall behind against other, your maybe your competitors or your peers within your sector, and they could be, improving their own processes whilst you're trying to catch up. So again, I think from a upgrade, that's from a business perspective, is take those into consideration as well. I think the following image that I've got on the screen, that is really kind of taken from the core platform upgrade, and that's from the ServiceNow Create Success Pack. And that's what I have found quite useful in terms of looking at the upgrade methodology, because it actually kind of simplifies and it streamlines that upgrade process. But I think it's also that you can look at how you can use that as a structured approach, by conducting those feature reviews, how you can support those organization, assessing new functionality, and looking how you can drive value product adoption in those future releases. So in terms of the pre-upgrade planning and business considerations, ServiceNow releases new version approximately every 6 months. And, it's not a question to, if to upgrade, but when and how often we should upgrade. And sometimes I've seen in the past with customers or I've spoken to other product owners, sometimes they might just upgrade once per year, or twice a year. So just depending on your own business risk and in terms of what the business demand is. But again, if your latest platform version is N2, it's 2 versions prior to the latest version, then you won't be obviously supported by ServiceNow. So again, just keep an eye on that. Speak to your ServiceNow account executive just to make sure that you are aligned. I'm sure, for me as a platform owner, I do get, those support emails coming through to say that, whether you're falling out of support or there's a deadline that you do need to upgrade. And again, there are ways I've seen, I've done in the past where you can extend the deadline for your upgrade, but I think there's a form that you have to fill out to the ServiceNow support, and that's obviously getting the buy-in from your security team, and again, you acknowledge that you're taking a risk because you're not upgrading by the deadline. So I think in terms of this, in terms of the stakeholder engagement, I think you just need to make sure that you engage with all your stakeholders that are utilizing ServiceNow within the organization. I think if you engage with them early, explain to them again, find out in terms of when their kind of main business priorities are, because sometimes the pattern of business, so if they've got a key event on during a particular year, making sure that you align and understand all those prior engagements, is then you can choose a particular good, a best time during the year when you can actually perform an upgrade, and at least you can put that onto your roadmap to say, right, we understand what what your organization in the business key events are, there's patterns of business activity, and then you can start to say, right, we are going to have our upgrades every year within this month. So at least then you have more of a consistency when you're going to do that upgrade, and making sure you have the relevant resources aligned that for any kind of user testing, and again, that you can start to leverage some of those new features as well. So cost benefit analysis, we really kind of want to look from a business perspective as, how will this upgrade improve our service delivery? How is it going to reduce that manual work? But, from a longer term perspective is, we need to look at how this is going to save your operational costs as well, because obviously, you need to be able to have some clear metrics to be able to justify the investment that you're, paying for ServiceNow. So, for example, upgrading could, streamline your approvals in procurement. It could be saving hours and hours of manual work. But if you were to, for example, bring in a partner consultant to support your upgrade as well, that's going to also cost money as well. So again, if you were to train up any development staff as well, that's also going to push out some of the costs for you to do the upgrade as well. So it is, again, just to understand from the business perspective of what's important and what's that going to improve your cost benefit. Minimize disruption is, as I mentioned, we talk about the critical business cycles. So what you don't want to be doing is upgrading during financial close or major product launch. And again, you could be introducing kind of unacceptable risks. So I think establishing like a phase upgrade across non-production environments can also really help catch issues early, because obviously if you've got a development instance, a test instance, you can also kind of do those upgrades ahead of time before you can say, right, I'm going to do an upgrade in production, but it's only going to take maybe a few hours just to do the upgrade, and then you've got a maintenance period to do that as well. Communication strategy, I think having a clear communication plan, also keeping those stakeholders informed at every stage of the upgrade process, and really kind of give them a timeline and what the expectation is that, if you're going to take 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks of upgrading, explain to them what's going to happen during that time, and what to expect, when they're going to do the testing, making sure they've got alignment for their resources as well. And some of the best practices from a platform owner perspective, again, is to review some of those release notes that's provided by ServiceNow. I think based on my experience as well, have a checklist as well. So ServiceNow does offer you a checklist that you can utilize. I've actually taken that checklist and I've actually made my own checklist. But again, that's something that, if you're fairly new to ServiceNow, use that as a baseline. And again, just get comfortable in terms of once you've done an upgrade once, twice, you're going to get into a good rhythm in terms of what that upgrade is going to take place, what that's going to look like. And you can try and streamline that as well, because ServiceNow provides a lot of documentation around upgrades. And again, I would say it's more of a best practice approach, but to just take that as a more of a template, a guideline on how best to do an upgrade, but also tailor it to your own your business needs and the way that you run your upgrades as well. Run a health scan as well. So again, if you've got any opportunities before you do an upgrade, just do a health scan. Working with your developers really to understand and able to mitigate those risks of, right, can we see what, once we do an upgrade, can we see what those risks would look like? We rather we do that before you do the upgrade, because what you don't want is a hidden surprise or something that does happen when you're doing you're upgrading in your dev, which is, again, it's going to add more time for you to do your testing and your fixing. So again, by doing a health scan, it's again really going to help review some of the customizations that you might have done. So, again, if you are a fairly new customer on ServiceNow, you might have things more of a greenfield approach, more out of the box. But if you've got a customer that has an instance that might be 10 years old, then you guarantee that they're going to have some sort of customizations on this. So you want to make sure, again, within your own environment, that you've done the necessary health checks, those testing as well. And again, if you do use ServiceNow Impact, so if you're a customer, you can also have an Impact Accelerator that really helps to support your upgrades. So if you've got a customer success manager, work with them to really understand what opportunities, what advantage that you can start utilizing some of those accelerator for upgrade. Because my experience with that is they actually give you a cloned instance, so they'll clone you a separate instance of your organization instance, and then you can also just do some testing on that without actually breaking your dev as well, which I find very useful. And if you've just recently kind of implemented ServiceNow with an implementation partner, and again, if you are on your journey to do that, is to ensure that you have again, knowledge transfer from them to say, right, how best for them to teach you, make sure that you're upgrading in the best practice approach as well. Okay, so I'm just going to move on to the next one. I think it'll be a poll. So the second poll is, what is your biggest challenge when executing ServiceNow upgrades?
And again, I made this a short answer, so I'll kind of call these out after we get some answers or after we close the pool. So now I was just going to drop into the chat the link to our session from last week, because Jerry was starting to allude to the health scan and some of the technical aspects of upgrading, which we covered in the webinar last week with Willem. In case you missed that, I'll give you a link to that so that you can check that out and get the deck from that, because there was, of course, some really valuable information there as well. So we've got about 14 people who've answered the poll so far. Let me grab this link for last week's session. I get about 25 people have answered the poll so far. It's going to be interesting to see what the challenges are. I would expect resources, time.
Yeah, I think I've got things. I mean, I've had experience. I think just engaging with some of the business stakeholders and users. I think also people say, well, we haven't got the relevant downtime. You can't upgrade because we're always busy. So, um,
But I think the points you were making earlier about the business value, if you can get the business to buy into those concepts and realize what the business value is of the upgrades, it could potentially be easier to get additional resources to help you with the upgrades because they're like, oh, okay, this will save us money because we can streamline the X and the X process, or
yeah,
this will save
of
us a
course. Yeah.
fee breach, potentially. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. We've got
Yep.
about half of the people have answered. And let's see what we got as results here. So communicating to end users, creating and maintaining ATF. Okay, I'll drop in a link to a session we did on ATF earlier this year. Oh, unwillingness of key process owners, stakeholders to amend their test scripts. First time overseeing an upgrade, he has no clue what to do. Please help.
Yeah.
Decide which features to use and avoid. Activities that happen between the start of the upgrade and dev until production upgrade, yes. No resources, it's not a priority. Reviewing skip changes, regression tests where ATF hasn't been implemented, clones, errors taking a huge time, decide which features to use and avoid. Yeah, so quite the gamut there of different.
It's great. There's some great answers there. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you for everyone for, kind of sharing some of those biggest challenges as well. So it leads me into my next point of, how do, I think we're at the execute upgrade and also kind of, working with the business, how we can start to minimize those business disruption. And I think in terms of, from my perspective, is that phased approach. I think, how can we start to, avoid disrupting some of those critical operations, as I mentioned before. So, because I think as customers of ServiceNow, we've got an advantage that we've got post production instances, such as like obviously development, we've got a test. So again, use your development instance as a phase approach, start to treat that as your production. But because obviously that's, your customers aren't using it and it's not being used operational, I mean, it does mean as well that you do need to consider that you have to put a development freeze on as well. So one of the things is, because you are going to be upgrading your development instance, what you don't want to be doing at the time is developing at the same time. Because if you imagine that you're upgrading your development to a higher version of your instance, and then and I've seen this happen in the past, and some really kind of horror stories where people have been developing in development and then moving it straight into tests, and tests is on a lower version of the instance, and again, they might not have some of those features, or things might have been deprecated. So again, it's just to be aware of that. So again, it's just having that buy-in from the business as well, to say, right, we've got a period of, within the period that we upgrade, we're not going to do any development where it's going to be a freeze on that, and really having that conversation, get them to buy in and understand that. So again, I think you got to also involve your testing teams. I think, before you start moving any kind of work across into your tests and into production. So what with the business involvement in UAT, I think there are, custom workflows that you might have developed in the past. You might have kind of, again, like I mentioned before, if you've got an older instance and you've got, complexity in your processes, that's going to take some time for UAT to take place. Again, do you have test scripts that you've worked with a business, and making sure that they've got, the relevant resources to be able to help support that, the UAT process. And again, think about your business users. They are the people that use and operate those business processes day in, day out. Your developers aren't. And if you start to get your developers test that, they won't understand some of the main kind of business processes that they do, and it's only the business users would be able to see that, say, right, if once we've upgraded and they've noticed, oh, this doesn't work, there's an error message that comes up, they can report that back. And there's ways again, we mentioned, ATF. So once you've got a good testing regime in, you can start automating some of those tests using automatic test frameworks. But again, making sure you've got, whether it's a, business user, just to make sure that they sign off that to make sure, yep, we know that's going to be working once we've upgraded in dev, test, and production. In terms of risk management and the fallback strategies, I think always have a fallback plan, and also ensure that you've got a rollback strategy. So you'll be able to see that once you, let's say, you've done the upgrade and testing in the development instance, and then also in your test. But again, it's just sometimes when you upgrade in production, you might not be able to anticipate, especially if you got integrations with third parties. So again, just making sure that you do check that, but again, just making sure you have some contingency plans, because we work in IT, and working in IT is, it's not always perfect, but as long as you've done your checks, you've got a plan to be able to mitigate some of those risks, but also having some of those checkpoints as well before you sign off and move forward on those. But also as well, have a risk register as well. Again, you can just put down all the risks that you do highlight and you do spot, and then at least then you can communicate that back to the business as well, just to make them informed in terms of how this particular upgrade is, because each upgrade is different depending on some of those features that they, or changes that they do with each of the instance upgrades. Some of the do's and don'ts experience from my own perspective is, do involve the business stakeholders early, keep them informed around the process. Normally what I would do is, for example, if I do some the kind of testing in the past, it's kind of like a go no go meeting, just making sure people are signing off those tests, testing for their own areas, because if they don't, then they're responsible really for not signing it off. But however, if you don't sign off those testing for that particular area, that might hold the overall upgrade change going forward, because ultimately, we're going through a change management process to making sure that, okay, before we commit any fixes, any kind of upgrades to our live production instance, we need to make sure we've done all of our necessary checks as well. I think involving your technical teams as well, just ensure that they're, when you do your upgrade in production, making sure that you've got standby support as well. When we're not talking about the ServiceNow support technical team, but we're talking about more of like if you got integration with the mid server or so single sign-ons. So making sure that when you do upgrade in production, if anything does go wrong, you've got support on hand to really kind of help you, because what you don't want to do is you upgrade and the person that kind of manages the single sign-on is on holiday, and yeah, and then once you upgrade and you can't get anyone to get back onto the instance, we're in big trouble there, because you've also got a integration that you need to kind of fix as well, but you need the subject matter expert to be able to be on hand for support as well. One thing I wanted to mention as well, if you are, let's say, the ServiceNow developer doing the upgrade, or kind of babysitting that upgrade through, it's also making sure you've got a backup person as well, making sure that they're trained up as well, because just in case that they, for if they're on sickness, or if there's got family emergencies, and again, it's just some consideration that needs to be taken aware of from a business perspective as well.
Hoping you didn't learn that one about the SEO or the SSO from experience.
No, no. I think it's something. I think from my own experience, I've seen some. I suppose poor planning from a platform upgrade, and again, it's something that my experience when I've been in change approval boards, and the change manager will be asking those sort of questions is, so who's going to be doing the upgrade, right? You've got this named person. If they're not here, who's doing the upgrade? Because within ServiceNow, you have to schedule the upgrade in the support portal. And if you don't have access to the support portal and you've already scheduled that's going to upgrade tonight, and if that person's off, your instance is automatically going to be upgraded.
Yep.
So you don't want to fall into that trap
Yep.
where if that does happen, and again, it's just thinking about some of those worst case scenarios, but also making sure you've got contingency plans in place to be able to support that. It's just again just making sure it's not going to impact on the business, because at the end of the day, is you do not want to impact people that aren't able to log in, are able to from your customers to be able to log in and get support. And that's going to inundate the service desk in terms of from a telephone call perspective as well. I think explore. I think from a technical perspective, I think work with your developers, look at ways of exploring kind of automatic test frameworks, upgrade plans, really kind of help speed up the testing and overall upgrade time. Again, each upgrade that you do will get quicker and quicker, but identify that as well. Look at the upgrade that you did and say, right, what ways can we start to improve and speed up that upgrade? Some of the don'ts, I think, don't rush your upgrade process to meet deadlines. Make sure that your testing is done thoroughly. And then also don't forget to kind of, again, what I mentioned was the post-upgrade health check is confirm everything is also working as well. So I think one of the things that you do when you upgrade your production instance is making sure that you also have a support call. What I normally do is have a Teams call open on the morning once the upgrade is completed, is to make sure when the business users are using it, that then if they're reporting issues, so you've got committed resources and support already with a bridge call on to say, oh, I've got an issue here, we need this fixing. So again, it's just again for some hypercare support as well. And again, I've done things where you could do some manual testing. So, just to raise an incident, send an email into your ServiceNow to make sure if you accept emails into your ServiceNow to make sure that's logging those tickets as well. And then you can also apply some like a fixed script to remove some of those testing tickets as well. So yeah. Okay, I'll just move on to the next one, which is polls. This is
Yeah, and
probably
you've
the
got
last
about
poll.
3 more minutes, Jerry.
Have I? Oh, okay. I'll speed up a little bit. In terms of the poll is how well do you think your organization realized value from new features and post upgrades?
And one of the things you could be thinking about while the poll's running is we had a question come in about how you manage store release upgrades. So if you have anything you want to include on that.
Yeah, I think store releases are I do find sometimes store releases are very different to the kind of upgrades, because store releases they have a very different cadence of releases. So again, you might need to have a different strategy in terms of managing your store releases separately to the main upgrades, because I think that there are a lot of store upgrades there, and that would also factor in some of that time you have to do the testing as well. So it might be an opportunity, Britt, to just include maybe a separate topic on that. But
That's what I'm
again, I think
thinking.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it also as well. I think it's also to identify some of those key store apps as well that might be critical to your overall upgrade as well as part of your planning, and making sure that you include that in your testing and as part of your upgrade planning as well.
Yeah. And I apologize. I thought I could show the poll while it was coming in and I accidentally ended the poll. So people are
Oh,
just
okay.
in right now. Yeah. There was another question about a rollback strategy. Well, actually, there's a couple folks that have their hands up, so maybe we can address that while we are doing the poll. So Kalashwari, I can let you come off mute, and if you have do you have a question or? Um, Thought I had you. You're still muted. Um, Kevin, I'll move on to you. Did you have something you wanted to ask? All right. Okay, we'll go down to Mandy. Did you still want to ask a question?
Are they allowed to be off mute by any chance, Britta?
Yeah,
Have
I
they?
have turned
Yeah.
on talking permitted.
Okay.
Think I had a question actually.
Hi, Mandy.
Hiya. I don't have a question.
Oh, okay. I saw your hand up, so I thought maybe you had something. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. Let's take a look at
Yep.
the question about whether folks are getting value, and then we'll try to get through this and still have some time for some Q&A. Still working on that. One criticism is that we don't have the capacity to do too much change at once. And they want to do testing. Sadly, I don't think they do understand the value, very scared to upgrade and utilize new features. New features are awesome, but take time to train. Sometimes we realize value, sometimes we upgrade for compliance. We get better, but change seems to be the enemy. There's value,
Yes. Yeah.
takes too long. A bit mostly AI, and we aren't ready for that. Maybe too small, not really, depends on the feature. Yeah, so kind of all over the spectrum
Yeah.
on that.
As expected, Britta. I
Yeah.
think given the experience I've had is sometimes we are, we're busy, trying to keep up to speed with, I suppose, with some of the new feature. I think
Yeah.
ServiceNow release quite a lot of new things. Like I said, it's twice a year that they have an upgrade and there's new features. So it's trying to keep up to date with that is also a challenge in itself as well. But I'll move on very quickly with the next one about, once we've done the upgrade is, how can we start to maximize the business value? How can we start to measure some of that success? Just beyond the technical performance and, some of the KPIs again that I've kind of listed is, in my mind is, can we how can we use an automated workflow to, start to reduce some of those manual effort? How can we ensure that, employees are completing tasks faster, so compared to, what they were, obviously we were on a previous instance, now we were on a newer instance. Some of the new features, are we able to measure that and report back on in terms of how we're maximizing that? User adoption as well. Again, we talk about the lack of probably training, again, the speed of business. We want to kind of get the upgrade done very quickly and then get back to the business as usual. I think that user adoption is quite important to making sure, people are adopting some of those new features and capability in the correct way. Otherwise, people are going to be inconsistent in terms of using the ServiceNow capability as well. I think also as well, you probably need to probably look at how the upgrade has impact on overall customer employee satisfaction. Has it made it better? Has it made it worse? But again, it's really understanding, what can we look at to do better in the future if there's something, different strategy approach that we need to take on your upgrade. I think with collecting feedback, collect feedback from the business stakeholders, also the people that are using ServiceNow. Again, to say how well were they involved in the testing? How are the new features that you've enabled? Is that really kind of helping them with their day-to-day processes, or is it inhibiting them doing work, or is it because they've got to learn more? So again, getting some of those key points of feedback to be able to help improve your next time that you upgrade. And some of the gotchas as well that I've kind of faced is each upgrade has its own set of challenges, and the more, I suppose, the more customizations that you do have is to be aware of that, making sure that you test those integrations, because sometimes the integrations with a third party might not be compatible with the ServiceNow upgrade. So again, just making sure that you do obviously check part of your overall upgrade planning. Okay. And the next one is more about the continuous improvement and future upgrade planning. So again, how can that be part of your broader ServiceNow roadmap, as I mentioned earlier, because obviously if you're upgrading every year once, whether it's twice, making sure that's part of your roadmap and really kind of linking that directly to your business strategic objectives, and making sure that you understand some of those new features. How can you start linking those together and really understanding some of those business pain points? We want to be able to collaborate across the organization. So if you're enterprise service management, or you're just looking at IT service within the IT services, you want to be able to kind of speak to all the main kind of business stakeholders and making sure that, okay, the next time we do an upgrade, what could be better? What can we start to improve? The way that you're testing, maybe the speed, or, or we can start automating some of those tests. In cost management, again, is how can we start to decrease the cost for that? Again, if you're taking quite a long time because you're going to put a development freeze during that period, how can you start to reduce some of that time and effectively enable, you've got a bit more, the cost of upgrade, but reducing that cost so you've got more time to develop. So again, just think about in terms of what strategic opportunities that you can do with automating some of the testing. Insights from experience that I've had is, I think, yeah, the more upgrades that you do, I think I've done about 3 or 4 upgrades when I've working with the ServiceNow platform. The more that you do, the more that you will streamline some of those processes. And again, just have your checklist, but you've always got something that you can go back onto and review that, making sure that you obviously collaborate with the business, collaborate with the developers, and really kind of streamline that approach.
And I
Moving
think one
on
of the things
to,
that, sorry, I was just going to pop in. One of the things that we realized about the checklist at the meeting last week about the technical was to have somebody else read out the checklist, or, run the checklist other than yourself, because it's easy to miss a step. I was doing on an upgrade, call, and we spent a whole day on a bridge line. And it turned out that the developer had missed the very first step in the checklist. And maybe if somebody else had been running the checklist and saying, hey, Joe, go do this, Bob, do this, Jane, do this, we might not have missed that step. So it's just another idea.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, like I said, sometimes when you're doing upgrades during a critical times, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think making sure just have a consistent checklist there that you can just go back and check. So even me, I've had experience. You still, you're not going to do the upgrades every day. You do it in points of the year, and it's always good to have a good reference point back to it. A bit of a recap. I think I know I'm kind of going over a little bit of time, but a bit of a recap in terms of looking why upgrade matters to the business, and I think making sure that we align the business goals, whether that's improving efficiency, automating process, and really kind of staying competitive as well. So upgrading regularly, we can help to reduce some of those risks, ensuring that your platform can remain secure and supported. Kind of put that pre-upgrade planning. We talk about the importance of engaging the business stakeholders early. It's also crucial to understand how the impact of the upgrade as well, and making sure that we are able to deliver some of those measurable value as well. Executing with minimal disruption is about looking at a phased approach. We talk about doing our dev instance, then tests. Again, if you're a ServiceNow Impact customer, looking how you can get a cloned instance as well before you even upgrade dev. So at least you've got an understanding of what the upgrade looks like, and then also get a health scan as well as part of that. The post-upgrade value is more of essential, making sure that your organization is getting the full value from the new features that ServiceNow is offering, but also the adoption is key to making sure that the users of ServiceNow getting the right training, and making sure that you can track on some of those improvements that they're using those features as well for the next time that you do upgrade. And then also the future planning as well, so making sure that you continuously improve the way that you're upgrading, but also continuously improve how you collaborate with the stakeholders as part of that UAT testing as well. Okay, moving to the next slide is more about, again, I've just listed some of the resources that I feel is quite important that, again, you can use those as reference points. And I think the bottom one, which is Kickstart Your Upgrade, is the latest one. I think that only came out yesterday, which is pretty good. It's got if it lists out a lot of features around the Xanadu release as well. But the links that I provided there, I think Britta will share that afterwards. We'll give you some good information on how you can effectively upgrade. Perfect.
Yep.
So over to questions.
So we do still have one question in the Q&A from Marique about a rollback strategy. There has been some chatter in the chat about that. I'll let Marique come off mute. Let me find them. If you still want to dig into that a little bit more.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Marique. How you doing?
Hey, doing good. So as far as rollbacks go, unfortunately, we pushed our last upgrade out past the extension point required, just so we had to get special permission and CISO buy-in and so forth. And our catalog item that we had scheduled it on had pushed it to the maximum limit. Unfortunately, I went on vacation and the people that were handling it didn't update it during the time. And we unintendedly upgraded our production instance on a weekend that it was scheduled
Okay.
for that we didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I quickly noticed it, jumped on, got on with high, and had to fight with them to get a restore done. I ran into the wall of, we don't do that for upgrades. That is, you just move forward with it and fix what's in place, even if it was unintended. Had to get Chris put out a really good point on the chat there about getting your rep involved right up front, because it didn't actually move until we escalated up to the rep and had to have our senior director online and ruffle some feathers in order to actually get a restore done. But during that time, instead of it being a few minutes to the first hour, it moved on to several hours later.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. So in the end, you did get a restore back then, did you? Obviously, with
Yeah, but it
people,
seemed like support had the word that they don't do restores anymore for upgrades.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
As a
Okay.
process, which was news to me because I've done them for a couple of large corporations before. It's not pleasant at all by any means. You have a
No.
huge gap that has to be fixed, and it's painful. But
I think, Marique, I've had experience where, if you are doing upgrades, just make sure that your account executive is aware of that as well, to making sure ahead of time to say, okay, if I'm going to encounter any issues, do I have your fallback in support, and can I have your number that I can call you? Because if something does go wrong, then you've got that support. But also as well, you've got the main ServiceNow support. I know you've used that before as well, but I usually kind of call them straight away. But I've had experience where I've actually babysat a upgrade through. So I think I was up about midnight, our business hours, where you just making sure that, okay, does the upgrade start to get kicked off? Because sometimes with the time that you schedule, let's say you schedule for midnight for the upgrade to take place, in my experience, that upgrade doesn't take place until 45 minutes later. And then you don't see the progress bar actually moving on. So what you want to make sure is that progress bar is continue to move on, because if it doesn't, if it just gets stuck, then you need to make sure that, okay, we need to get onto support, because I've got a change window that I need to work within, because obviously that's being agreed by the business, but also making sure that you have some contingency time also baked into that as well, just in case some of these things do happen. And again, you've got the change schedule window that you can do the maintenance, but again, if you do get it back early, you can enable it back early. So, and again, it's just just from experience, it's just to factor in some of that consideration that, again, explaining to the business these things may happen. It's just, again, it's to understand how you can mitigate some of those risks going forward.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep, we're all about the mitigating them. And my understanding is there's a 4-hour window when that change can actually take place, right, for the upgrade, even though you schedule it at a certain time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, everybody, thanks for the feedback on the chat and everything. We are about at time here, so I'm sorry, we're gonna have to wrap this up. If you want to go to the next slide, Jerry, we do have a link here where you can grab the get to some of the other events. Yeah, if you scan the QR code there, you can grab some of the upcoming events that we have. The next one we'll be running is Citizen Development on October 1st. So if that's something that you're doing in the organization, please tune into that. And there'll be a survey coming out right after this. It's just a couple of questions. We just like to know how we're doing and how we can improve this and any suggestions for future topics that you might have. So thanks everyone for joining us today and hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.